Time is now 7 p.m. I will call the Common Council meeting to order. Do we have roll call, please?
Mr. Schrader, Mrs. Schatzinger.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Gallops.
Here.
Mrs. Kane.
Here.
Mr. Gotsky.
Here.
Mr. Wirch.
Here.
Mr. Split.
Here.
Have a quorum.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading from Matthew chapter 5, blessedness according to Jesus. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Let us pray. Lord, make us the instrument of peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Howard, seconded by Page. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. And do we have any public comment tonight? No, no public comment. All right, moving right into our public hearing for the community development block grant close and public facilities. Time is now 7:03. I will call that public hearing open. And Adam, would you like to go over a summary of what this is for?
Yes, so on your tables there, you should have had a public hearing agenda. So some of the stuff is pretty specific. We have to mention it. So I will just sort of read through what this public hearing is for. This is the second required public participation meeting for the Cdbg program. The city has received 2 Cdbg grants over the last year and a half for projects within the community. Those projects are the Vermont Street and Parkway Terrace project, as well as the Grace and Lloyd Mitchell Senior Activity Center project. The Vermont Street Parkway Terrace project is nearly complete. Remaining work includes final pavement and exterior punch list items, which will occur in the spring, and final payment is expected by June. The contractor for the project, James Peterson and Sons, has been paid just over $2.1 million for the project, with a balance of around $21,828 to finish. Cdbg public facility funds for the project received to date $278,628.60, with a remaining balance of $721,371.40 for a $1 million grant. The Grace and Lloyd Mitchell Senior Activity Center project is designed and bid. Work is scheduled to be completed by 10/31 of 2022. The contractor for the project is Harmony Construction Management, and it was awarded a bid for just shy of $2 million, $1,988,313. Cdbg closed funds were awarded for the project totaling $552,373.65. No funds have been received. We now have an open comment period for citizens to share their views on the program. We can also take suggestions from the council to just what your views are, if you have any, on the success of the program, and identifying any other Cdbg issues that could be addressed by the Cdbg programs or projects that can be addressed by Cdbg dollars. including housing needs. And then we also have to state that there's been no displacement or relocation assistance for any of the projects. So with that, we can kind of open it up.
All right. There was no public signed up to speak. Do any of the council members have any comments or questions? Hearing none, is there anything more that we need to cover, or can we close the hearing?
I'll just mention identifying housing needs. We are doing a housing study. So I think from that, we may be able to glean information that we can use to fund projects with CDBG dollars. So that would be the only thing I would add.
All right, thank you. Time is now 7:06. I will close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam.
Yep.
All right, moving into our first action item, Ripon Guardian Ambulance Service Report. We have Mitch, if you'd like to introduce our guest.
Good evening, everyone. As you are all well aware, we had the pleasure of having Dan Williams spend a significant amount of time with us here from August to December, going through many facets of our department. So he is here in the flesh tonight to share his overview and take questions after that. So I will turn it over to Dan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
So like Mitch said, I spent quite a bit of time here reviewing the department and looking at various things within the department. Mitch was a relatively new director. He had good solid background and just needed a couple of times of some mentoring and going through some of the things that you don't necessarily learn in the textbook when you go to the class. In fact, there is no class on how to run a service, which is kind of sad. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about some of the issues within the department. And I thought what I would do tonight, and you've got the report, so I won't necessarily go word for word, but I thought I'd hit a couple of the important pieces of the report, and then open, if you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer whatever you might have in front of you. When I first talked with Mitch, I think it was probably in July before we actually started the work in August, he had some concerns that were taking place, and he just wanted to get some insight. And the more we talked, the more we decided that probably an engagement of some sort was going to be necessary to come and help with some of the more difficult pieces of the puzzle, if you will. And so that's kind of what led to the engagement. One of the biggest concerns that I had was in the area of billing. And it wasn't due to the fact that you had personnel here that weren't doing their job. It's just that they never had the opportunity to get the proper training to do what they needed to do. EMS, ambulance billing, has become a very complex thing. The federal government doesn't have any mercy on anybody any longer. You could say in the past, you could say, well, you know, we were just learning and we didn't do this right, or we may have not have done that right. And they'd say, well, okay, that's fine. No longer. The case is now if they find a mistake, from that point on, every claim after that can be a fraudulent claim. They can charge you $10,000 a day on every claim after that, times 3 if they'd like to exercise that option that they have. So they have all of the pieces of the puzzle in their court. So when we looked at the billing, we saw that there were some problems there. And so one of the things that we did was we cleaned up some of the issues. And my recommendation was then to really go to one of the EMS professional billing companies. They have all of that training. They have all of the expertise. And fortunately for us and for you, right down the road in Watoma was one of the preeminent companies in the country, which was LifeQuest EMS Billing. So I made the recommendation that the city should go ahead and do that and switch over to them, and I believe that change has now been made effective January 1st. We set everything up in the process. Mitch did a lot of hard work. The staff did a lot of hard work getting everything in place for that to happen. So the billing part of it, I think, is in the process of taking care of itself. It'll probably be 6 to 8 months before all of the various claims and the reimbursements and things like that come into play, so you'll really be able to put any kind of parameters or determine, you know, what part of it is better, what part of it could still be improved on, things like that. It'll just take some time, I think, for some of those pieces of the puzzle to shake out. Budgeting, I made a couple of comments about the budgeting. You have had the luxury over the years of having the ambulance service not be a drain on the city. And that continues today, but like I said in the report, that won't last forever. Everybody in Wisconsin, from an EMS standpoint, and actually around the country, is having workforce shortage problems. Not just in EMS, I mean, it's everywhere. I think you don't have to go to even hardly a restaurant and find out that there's a problem with people not wanting to work any longer. That's going to push the envelope a little further towards the side of needing more paid staff. Whether those are all full-time I think you can hold off things for quite a while, but you might need a couple of full-time. In fact, I'm recommending at least one in the relative near future that can take some of the load and pressure off of Mitch in the day-to-day activities, plus learn the position as well. You know, I'm never comfortable when a department who is as busy as this one is one person deep at the top. It's just not a good system to have. So I think that would be a good place. That person can serve the role of like an assistant as well as work on the squad. So we touched on that. We also, you know, talked about some of those financials with it being, you know, the cost of certain things as you go down the road. People are always kind of shocked when we start throwing some of those numbers out there for our full-time 7 day a week, 24-hour day full-time service. It's $500,000. That's just what it costs. It's not a number I like to say, but that's, you know, it takes 6 full-time people to run a schedule that puts only one truck on the road. So I think there's lots of ways. We put some incentive programs in place. Mitch had a couple before I arrived. We talked about and added in a few more, which I think have been effective, and we'll push that wall back a little bit further so you don't have to react to having full-time personnel quite as soon as you might, some other folks might have. But the personnel has really become a bidding war in the EMS industry. People who were, you know, starting full-time jobs at $15.50 an hour a year and a half ago are now starting at $25.50 an hour. So it's been a huge change in the structure, and that's that way everywhere you go. You know, jobs that you would never thought would have paid XYZ are being paid, you know, a lot of money right now. Operationally, the department is in great shape operationally. I think they run a nice department. Your community can really feel good about the service. They provide good patient care. They do a good job. They're efficient. They get the job done with the people that they have, and they don't have a lot of extra people. You know, a good example of one of the things I think I mentioned in the report was, you know, people always say, well, when am I going to need more personnel? And I always say, well, when you start getting more calls than you can manage. That's usually when you start to need more personnel. Well, tonight, I'm happy to report that just before I arrived, they had 3 calls within, 3 minutes? 8 minutes of each other, and they were able to put 3 trucks on the road tonight. So that was, you know, that was luck in some regards, because they didn't have the 3 trucks staffed, but, you know, people heard what was going on, and they dropped what they were doing, and they came in and took care of the needs of the city. So, you know, just your service or your community can be really happy with the service that you have. Facilities, I touched on that a little bit, just for the future. You know, it's not an ideal location to have a service, especially when you start putting people in-house to stay here to be able to respond. They've done a great job with remodeling and fixing up things downstairs, but if there's a greater remodeling job that needs to take place here or somewhere down the road, I think a facility needs to be considered and looked at. One of the concerns I have as well is that you're covering some communities that don't pay, in my opinion, their fair share. And I think that you should address that at some point. Now, I don't think that you should go out and try to get all of the money that is the same equivalent in the city, but I think that there's something that can be said for paying for something that you're providing for them. If they were to, you have the numbers that if you were to put that service in place for themselves, we know what that number is, and for some of these communities, they're not paying anything. And I clearly understand that it's a two-edged sword because those little communities don't have a lot of money. And if you go in and walk in and say, well, we want to charge you now $100,000 a year for ambulance service, that's obviously not going to happen. But I think, some sort of a formula that can be based on, there's all kinds of formulas out there that can be based on, call volume, square miles, assessed value, all these kinds of things. You can come up with some sort of a formula where they can at least contribute and help defray some of the cost. So that was kind of a quick run through the report. I think I hit most of the high points. I'd be certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about anything that's in here.
All right, first I just want to thank you for your time and consideration of our department. I did only have one question for you. In our considerations for increasing to full-time staffing and that $500,000 per ambulance for full-time, would you consider it feasible to scale up and start with one full-time unit and one or two part-times to back it up?
Yeah, and that's what, I wanted to give you the number so you had the sticker shock and then you could be done with that. Because it's a number we can't avoid, but it is what it is. And that's probably the bare bones number now. I haven't figured in the inflation factor and the new everything that's going on with shortages and things like that. Yeah, I don't think that you will need to be there for quite a few years. I think that another full-time person would help because that would supply somebody between Mitch and that person, that would supply somebody who takes up one position on a duty crew. So that can be very beneficial. And you have, like I said, you have a very good dedicated staff of people who can fill in all of the rest of the time. They're filling it all in now. If we have another person who can help with that, because there are some days when it gets pretty slim. A lot of times when I was here and Mitch and I had a day plan for how we were going to go through this or that or whatever, he'd wind up going on 3 calls that day, and he was taking second or third call. So, the schedule isn't full all the time, but I think the people in the community do a great job of doing what they can to commit their time to the schedule. But yeah, you're quite a ways away from going to that number and to have that need. I think you're 3 to 5 years away from that. Unless, everybody walks out the door tomorrow. Mitch, is that going to happen?
Because I'm not leaving too.
All right, does anyone else have questions for him?
I would just like to commend the entire staff, especially in light of, seeing and hearing stuff like this about how strained everything tends to be. Whenever there's anything that comes to the council for discussion, there's always a great turnout. And I think that shows an incredible amount of support and dedication that you and your staff have. So I have never needed your services, but I know that it would be absolutely top notch just based on how you all show yourselves and the support and dedication of what you do. So thank you very much.
Julie?
I'll add to what Paige had said, and also you had said that operationally that we have a great department here. being that I know that you have assessed many different departments, can you speak a little bit more as to some of the things that make it great that we want to make sure that we keep supporting? Is there anything more you can elaborate, and as well as in order to keep good staff? Obviously you mentioned it's the pay, and you mentioned there's some areas for the facilities that we could be looking at to make sure it's a nicer place for folks that need to stay. Are there other things outside of that too?
Well, those are two big ones. I mean, pay is it helps stabilize the group, and especially now that it has become a bit of a bidding war, it makes it a little bit more difficult to try to keep up with the Joneses, if you will. And then the facility, because again, you have to realize that if a person takes a 24-hour block of time, then this is their home for 24 hours. It's just not like they can go home if that's, if we have a person that we call paid on premise. That person's here. And so you want to make it somewhat homey, and not, obviously you're not going to have all the conveniences of home. But the other thing is that that I saw right away when I first came in and started going to a couple of the squad meetings and stuff was that, there's a good group of people who are dedicated. They show up for the meetings. They enjoy the training. They're engaged in the training. You don't see that everywhere. I've gone into some places where 2 people show up for a meeting. It's the same 2 people who show up for every meeting. The people who need to be there to hear the things that you're saying aren't there. I didn't see any of that here. So that was a very positive for me as well. It made it a lot easier for me to do what I needed to do, because there was some things that we needed to change in how they documented patient care reports and things like that. And they were very attentive and very open to the change. Because when you ask people to make changes, I think we all know how that, people aren't excited about making changes. And we ask them to make in some cases, a couple of pretty significant changes to how they write their patient care report. I didn't hear one snarky comment or frowny face or anything like that. They were just said, okay, what do we need to do? And that was the attitude that we saw all the way through. So it was truly a pleasure to work with Mitch as well as this group, because you feel sometimes, I've gone some places and it's like, holy cow, the room could be blank and you're talking to the big wall and nobody's there to ask, nothing. Here it was just significantly different. The atmosphere around City Hall is excellent. Your city administrator is obviously, already is very well schooled in what he does. And, the relationships with the police department that are, I just saw a great camaraderie within the staff in the building, which again, trust me, you don't always see. In many cases, you don't see that at all.
Thank you for sharing that. It makes me very proud to hear and be proud of the city.
Okay.
And did I hear that you were recognized recently as far as rural services? Can you?
Well, I got, I formerly was the chief of EMS for the state. Then I retired. Then I did some of the things like help you guys. And then they lured me back, the state has lured me back into to be the rural coordinator for the state of Wisconsin, to go out and help services in more of the rural confines that are having trouble with staffing and just figure out some other ways of how they can maybe, things that they may have thought were exhausted as their options, and we figure out some other ways that they might be able to do something. So yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, like you said, now we get you for free.
Yeah, I told him that, right? I said, you're still classified as rural, so you get me for free now.
So, and I'll just add, this was very unique. Dan was here working with Mitch 2 or 3 times a week sometimes in the office. So this now becomes sort of the blueprint for us as staff to begin working on. There are some very important things that need to happen in the next 6 months or so, including engaging our community partners that we service to discuss agreements and rates, as well as laying the groundwork to go to have a second full-time staff member. The idea being that the moves with adjusting to billing, the moves with going to the other communities opens up space in revenue in the budget to help pay for that full-time staff member. So, so we will begin those conversations and work with Mitch and Dan, hopefully just as a resource to begin implementing some of these additional recommendations. Because frankly, Mitch and I have talked 100 times about this. We see the issues. They're not uncommon, but this relationship has put us on a pretty strong path to tackle them now and not let them come to you in 4 years saying, here's $650,000 we need for 4 or 5 full-time staff. So that's the goal, and that's what we will continue to plug away at.
Okay, anything else?
I have a question for Mitch. It's been 2 months now that we've been under the new billing system. Could you speak a little bit on how that transition has gone? What is better about it now than what we used to do?
So, yeah, I can speak on it a little bit. The one problem is that we're still getting a lot of things that are kind of falling into place, essentially. So what has to happen briefly is our LifeQuest, who we contracted with, has to send out to all of the payers. So each different insurance company that they work with, they're going to have to send out to essentially change demographics so they get paid and then we get the money from them. But so there's not a lot of revenue coming in yet because all that stuff is still happening. So I can't really talk to you very much about that. Like Dan had said, about 6 8 months or so. I would say in about 6 months we'll have some good data, but there's still calls that are being billed, from January that are just starting to get rolling now because I'm still talking to them actually pretty much daily, providing information for different, insurance companies and stuff like that. And what they said too is that a lot of the insurance companies, unfortunately, they get the notice, they just don't do anything about it. They keep sending payments here, and we've already seen that. But as far as workload, I can say that, in fact, Monday, today I always came in and I always dreaded the weekend stack of calls. And now instead of a half a day just to sort through them and get demographics and all that entered in, it's about an hour's work where I can make that stack disappear. And so workload for me, it's been wonderful. Just having even records requests, we used to do all those ourselves. So we'd have to, print copies off, certified copies, that kind of thing. LifeQuest handles all of that. If I have something I need, I send an email to, her name's Carrie, the main contact, and everything is handled. So it really is a one-stop shop, and I can't speak any more highly of it than that. That's for sure. It's great.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Good.
Good.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions for Mitch or Dan, we will move on. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Mayor, you had it as an action item on here. Do we need to accept this report, Lloyd, or?
I'd say that's a good way to move this forward.
Yep. Thank you. So I'll move to accept the Ripon Guardian Ambulance Service Report as presented tonight.
Second.
Moved by Jim. I heard Paige first for the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the EMS report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. All right, moving to our next item, the City of Ripon investment policy. Would you like to start this one?
I can. So we obviously hired a new finance director, assistant city administrator. Amanda Toney is here. And one of the first things we talked about was doing an investment policy. So if she wants to come and introduce herself, just so you know who she is, first and foremost.
I can do that. Although you should have put me before Dan, because His discussion is a lot more riveting than an investment policy, that's for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, some may disagree.
Speaks the banker.
Right, yes. So I am Amanda Toney, your new finance director, assistant city administrator. Been here about a month. Tomorrow will actually be a month, I think. And one of the first things that Adam talked to me about was redoing the investment policy. It was pretty outdated. I'm not really even sure the last time it was reviewed by the council. So I thought I would just go over some of the high points that I changed in it, and then I can certainly take any questions. But I gathered my information obviously from state statute 66.0603, which is noted in the investment policy. I recently redid it at Green Lake County, so I referred back to that, and then we had some other investment policies from some other municipalities, just to kind of look at to see how they were doing it. So one of the first things I did was the eligible investments section. If you look at that, that's actually taken directly from the state statute. Our previous one was pretty tied down and kind of limited us as to what we could invest in. So I just took it directly from the state statute to kind of broaden it and give us a little bit more flexibility in that area. The maturities section, I really condensed that. That we kind of had our hands tied a little bit as to how long we could invest. So looking at some previous policies, I believe we can go maybe 10 years right now, but that will just allow us to not really tie up our investments, but if we have anything that we could possibly tie up for a little bit of a longer term, we can definitely get a better return on our investments and make a little bit more money for the city in terms of that. Collateral requirements, again, they were very specific before. I just kind of broadened these, to kind of suit any of the investments that we might actually come across. I added a section for ethics and conflicts of interest. I thought that was an important piece to have in a policy of this nature, so I added that. And then lastly, I kind of reorganized the flow of the whole policy. So kind of put it in order of like when you first take out the investment as to when you'd review it and when it would get approved, so that the flow of it kind of read a little bit smoother. And like I said, I could go through every line item, but I pretty much changed every single section. Those were just kind of the highlights that I thought I would touch on. So does anybody have any questions? Just remember, I'm new.
I'll just add that the motivating factor for this policy in general was many years ago, the state statute changed on what the terms, allowable terms municipalities can, say, buy a CD at. It was stuck at like 3 years. Mm-hmm. They provided flexibility to go out longer than that, I believe 5 years. Mm-hmm. Our old policy limited us to 3 years. So when we're talking to our investor, investment firms and looking at our portfolio, we're very limited as to some of the layering and things we can do, and we're sort of handcuffing ourselves. So they recommended for many years to change it. And when Amanda started, I said, here.
Change it. So hopefully it's changed to meet everybody's needs, I guess. Yeah. So.
Jim?
Maybe to ease public perception when you hear the word investment policy is a lot different than the personal investment policy. We can't go out and buy rubles with this.
Right. Right.
And speculate. But people may hear this today and go, well, what are they buying?
What are they buying?
Shares of Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
Are they
Oh, no.
investing in rubles? I'm being facetious, but people may hear that.
Yeah.
It is a very distinct investment products that we can actually do and use. FDIC is a big word that's in the policy a lot.
Yep.
Federal Deposit Insurance Corp.
Yep.
Bonds, securities, things backed by the government. So it's not per se what you and I may have in our own personal portfolios by, maybe parts of ours, but we still are very limited what we can do.
Totally.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
We're not.
Want to ease.
Yes. Thank you for
public
clarifying that.
perception.
Yes. Yep.
Good comment.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for doing
Yep.
this.
Yep. Anything else?
Julian?
I'm grateful that you said you added the ethics and conflicts of interest. I'm glad you're thinking about ethics for our city.
Yeah.
A question for me, there's a line here that says investment officials shall disclose any material interest in financial institutions with which they conduct business. Can you share with me a little bit more about what that means and who are investment officials? Is that all of us?
Which page are you on?
I'm looking at the second page under
Okay.
your ethics and conflicts
Okay.
of interest section. It's the second sentence in that paragraph. Investment officials.
It basically means anybody that's given the authority to act on behalf of the city and invest their funds. So it's mostly myself and Adam.
Got it.
That's who that refers to in that section.
So, I mean, it's just kind of the conflict of interest. If we have a financial gain with a company that we're working with that's investing, we have to disclose that or just not do that because we may have a personal gain from investing in that, you know, so it just kind of ensures that we're not investing the city's money to benefit ourselves,
Yep.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
right?
Yes, exactly.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Or motions to approve the policy?
I do, real quick. So if we vote to approve this tonight, what will this change for our city?
Nothing at the moment. It will, like Adam was talking earlier, when our investments come due, CDs and such, it would allow us to perhaps go out a little bit longer than 3 years. It'd allow us to go out to probably 5 years on some of those.
Got it.
So nothing really earth-shattering right now.
No, I mean, it's, we've just been told for a few years
Yeah.
that we need to update this.
Yeah, I think it's been in our
Finally
audits,
there.
maybe. Yep.
So,
Anything else?
Make a motion to approve City of Ripon investment policy.
Second.
Moved by David, second by Howard. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the City of Ripon investment policy, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Next item is a rezoning request for 320 and 332 State Street, changing from R1 single family to R2 1 and 2 family zoning. For those of you who might not be familiar with this property, it's the old church kind of halfway down the hill on State Street, being remodeled into a 2-family house. And the parking lot is a separate parcel, but it is included in the rezone. Or half the parking lot is. And the Plan Commission does recommend this for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by John Split, seconded by Paige. Any questions or discussion?
Were there any concerns from any of the neighbors in the rezoning meeting?
no.
No.
And there is an R2 zone property directly across the street. So,
Any further questions or discussion?
Are there going to be any major changes to the outside? Have they been looked at, approved, whatever? I mean, it's
I
gonna-
don't believe plans have been submitted for the project yet. I
Okay.
know they just re-roofed it last year, so I guarantee they're not gonna be changing the roof.
Okay.
Well, almost guarantee. Shouldn't be. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the rezoning request of 320 and 332 State Street to R2, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Next up is the Grace and Lloyd Mitchell Senior Activity Center and Trailhead Project bid alternatives. Adam, if you want to start this one.
So as you're all aware, we awarded the base bid for the project earlier this month. Obviously, the meeting schedule is a little bizarre, but we're back now on the 28th. And one of the main reasons we postponed a decision on the bid alternatives for the trail extension was grant funding. through the state neighborhood investment fund application. The state has taken the approach with the neighborhood investment fund to dribble slowly out awards, starting last week, Wednesday, where they announced one award for $9 million, then Thursday, 2 awards. So there's about $140+ million still waiting to be awarded that we have not been told whether we are awarded it or whether we have been denied funding. There have been communities that I've been told have been said, you are denied, you have not, moved forward. So there's still a chance that we do indeed receive funding through that grant totaling about $1.2 million like we applied for. That doesn't help us obviously tonight in making the full decision. We do have $100,000 confirmed by Fond du Lac County for the trail project. And the general recommendation is to award bid alternate 2 and 4. If you would like to see the map, I can show it to you. Just so we're clear about what we're doing with 2 and 4. At the same time, tomorrow I might get the notice that we were awarded $1.2 million. So, we may request that the remaining bid alternates be awarded contingent on that grant award. So what we would be getting for bid alternate numbers 2 and 4, totaling $105,000, is the red trail coming down and connecting to the Senior Activity Center, as well as the blue trail running north, connecting to the trail that is existing in green, and then to the south here, connecting to the ball diamonds. So that's what we would be getting for the $105,914, 100,000 of which would be covered by the Fond du Lac County grant. The remaining work that would be completed if we got the grant would be a kiosk station, and then these connection points through here, and then paving of this trail through here as it enters the park. So, it's super disappointing to not be told about this grant because they have kicked this back time and time again. And Harmony Construction Management has indicated they would hold pricing for a while on this portion of it, but at the same time, we have to, notify them at some point if we're doing the full scope or not. So at the very, least what we're sort of looking at tonight is approval of bid alternates 2 and 4, totaling the $105,914, to be funded by the Fond du Lac County allocation, and bid alternates 1, 3, 5, and 6 be approved contingent upon receiving funding through the Neighborhood Investment Fund grant if awarded by the state of Wisconsin. That's where we're at, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And my suggestion would be to take it in 2 parts. So let's deal with whether you want to move forward with bid alternates 2 and 4 totaling $105,914 to be funded by Fond du Lac County. You can start with that motion if the council is so inclined.
Those 2, alternative 2 and 4, does that give you any leg or additional support for any other future grants by doing those projects? Will that help the overall project for any other future ask of a grant process like we applied for before and were denied? Do any of these give anything better for down the road to say, hey, look what we have ready if we finished it with your aid? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think there is some strategy there, but ultimately, from a regional trail network, the moment we get the Mascoutin here, this red,
That's the key point.
you're pretty much done, frankly. I mean, that's just, you've already extended the trail. So what do you need more money for that can't be funded locally? But at the same time too, having it there makes sense to continue to do some of this work. So on the other side of it, if there is funding available for things that come, from the state or federal in the next few, years, we at least have it there and aren't asking for a massive amount of money to do everything. So.
And the second question would be, did the state give us specific parameters when they would announce by?
Yes, February 21st, the week of, okay? They announced the first award to the city of Beloit for $9 million for a project. I'm not even going to talk about it. And at the end of the announcement, they said, we will be announcing the remaining awards over the next week. And every PR that has come from the governor, and this is what it is little by little, they're awarding these. And every time one comes out, it says, we will be announcing other ones over the next week. So every time it extends it out. Today, there were no awards. So I don't know if it was just the news cycle. I don't know. But there's 140 some million dollars left. And we just want one.
But there was nothing in the original grant that said by March 15th or something.
The original was early in January.
The original was
Yeah.
December.
That got amended.
December, January, February 21st.
Yeah.
And they started, but it's just, it's maddening, frankly, because, I mean, I know a lot of communities applied for things and they're announcing it in a fashion of, here you go. It's not like we're even telling you ahead of time. It seems that they are here, surprise, you're funded. So I think our project is a strong project for the program, and, hopefully in the next couple days we get notified of that, so.
And has there been conversation with Harmony Construction to that effect of, if we made this contingent on, are they going to guarantee our pricing contingent on if we?
Yeah, they'll hold for at least a couple more weeks, I think. I think on this particular component of the project, because this is a little different in terms of the overall, project scope of building materials and cost. This is pretty set in the overall cost, and I mean, generally speaking, I think the majority of this work will be done by R&R Wash, a local subcontractor.
With locally sourced materials, so it's fairly
Yep.
stable price.
Just from the original conversation of only holding it for 2 weeks.
They've been fair with us. I think if we get out another 3 weeks though, they got to start planning this, so we got to commit. So, but I think, from a logical standpoint, the first part, 2 and 4, we can definitely afford to do. It's just the remaining balance, so.
How long do you think Fond du Lac's gonna hold the 100,000?
Oh, they'll hold it for, we just have to have a conversation, and I think they'll release the funds is sort of the conversation I've had with Aaron over at the county executive's office. So their money is in the budget. It's not going anywhere. I just think we have to spend it this year, so.
So we really don't have to make a decision tonight. It's not gonna have a negative impact on anything if we wait to see what happens here.
I would suggest if you're amenable to committing to options 2 and 4 tonight, and then the remaining, either pass something contingent on the other bid, or that could be pushed to another meeting.
Okay.
But if you make it contingent on the other grant, then it wouldn't have to come back to another meeting.
To the map, I just want to make sure, to look at, so the red one that goes up to the right, that is to the Muscooten Valley Trail.
Yep.
Right? And then the other one, you said that was blue across the top, that's the Northwestern Trail connection. And it's been a while since I've been out there this last summer, but that is already paved, sort of like parking lot in that back area, right?
There is a parking lot on this area here, yes.
So in some regards, talk me through, I mean, there's not that much traffic back there. Some would say, is there? Okay. Tell me more about, yeah.
From May through August, you can't find a place to park back there.
Yeah, true.
Because there's soccer going on, there's softball, there's baseball, there's tournaments. It is packed.
And having the trail off the
Right.
driveway would make it much
And the
safer.
trail would be to the south side of that parking area.
So it would make
It
it
would be
safer, is what I'm
independent
hearing.
of that parking
It's for the
space.
safety of the people on the
Yep.
trail.
Okay, great, just making sure.
Didn't mean to laugh, just as someone who lives in the parks, it kind of hit me, but, Adam, question, for you. If we go with, 2 and 4, with the gravel base and that, wouldn't that give us a better inside step with the Knowles Nelson, grant for paving? To complete that?
It could.
I mean,
You know,
dealing with the trails that I have, that, they love paved trails.
Yep.
And that does tend to give you a leg up on those type of situations. If this other grant falls through, that's something
Still might
that we
be able
can
to get
still look at.
Yep, and then it comes, so, and just to look at the numbers, adding asphalt paving on, for alternate 3 on that red section is only $10,000.
Right. And then we have the blue section too.
Yep. Would we, and this just becomes a prioritization thing, will there be other applications we put in for bigger projects than what's remaining here? And
Right.
that's where it's sort of, we have to, we can apply for stewardship grants again in the future, but we may need a bigger project to be funded, because in this case, you're looking at $138,000 of a remaining project, which isn't a lot, but we may have a $250,000, $300,000 project in the future that we want to fund that may be more competitive. So it could play in our favor a little, and obviously, their position on paving things. So yes and no, it doesn't
It just
hurt.
leaves us another avenue in
Yeah.
case we need,
The funds.
because it's good to finish one project before jumping on to another.
Yes, definitely. I get it.
Thank you.
Jim?
Probably for Lloyd. Can we accept a bid contingent on a grant proposal? Is it legal to accept, an RFP bid contingent on if we get a grant? Is there any legalities to that?
That's why we're going to be very careful in doing this. So that's why we're moving 2 and 4 first. And yes, I do think there's a way to word it in such a way that we make it clear to the contractor that this alternate to the bid will only be activated subject to the financing coming through the grant. I believe on an alternate bid basis, we're going to be okay.
But I feel more comfortable coming back to another meeting and having that as a formal motion, personally.
You'd rather,
If it's 2-3 weeks, we'll have another meeting.
Yeah, we meet next week already, so mark your calendars, because it's a funky
Correct.
schedule. I wouldn't feel too, it wouldn't be the end of the world to wait till that, but I have no idea if by the 8th of March, we'll have an idea if we are awarded funding at this point. It's just,
but I guess you make a good point. If we literally are coming back on March 8th,
Yeah.
we can talk to Harmony, indicate we're going to just hold for another week or 10 days on the second piece of this puzzle. And then that way, Jim's point's well taken, we're in a position to say yay or nay if the award were to come through. If not, in March 8th, we could go with this second alternative. So, again, let's look at the first piece of the puzzle first, which is the council in favor of moving forward on alternates 2 and 4, given the fact that the city administrator has indicated he is certain that the county is going to honor the $100,000. Or certain anyone can be.
Does the motion need to have the funding from Fond du Lac County to pay for it?
I have no objection if you put that in there.
That's fine. It's-
Okay.
Would anyone like to make such a motion?
I would make a motion to accept alternate plan 2 and 4 for the $105,000 that is projected in the cost, using the funds provided by Fond du Lac County for the trail project.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved by Howard, seconded by John Gatsky. Any further discussion?
Don't we need to put the name of what the project is in the motion? Is that assumed?
Yeah, the senior center trailhead project. We'll add that for him.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Roll call, yeah.
What's that?
Roll call.
Okay. So roll call for the motion of accepting alternate bid proposals 2 and 4 for the Grayson Lloyd Mitchell Senior Activities Center and Trailhead bid alternatives through Harmony Construction.
Mrs. Schatzinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hanson,
Yes.
Mr. Gallops,
Yes.
Mrs. Kane,
Yes.
Mr. Gatsky,
Yes.
Mr. Wirch,
Yes.
Mr. Split.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
And is it the consensus that we bring this back March 8th? We have a meeting?
March 8th, yes.
Next week, we will do our best.
Okay, we'll do our best to know more, and we may want to, as the administration has indicated, consider the second piece if we have not heard from the state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to our last action item, resolution authorizing the submission of a WEDC Community Development Investment Grant application for the redevelopment of the property at 230 Watson Street. Adam?
So as part of our development agreement with Greystone Ventures for the redevelopment of 230 Watson Street, or the American House, we had said we would assist in the application of a community development investment grant with the WEDC. So we're at the point where we are past the first round of review at the WEDC. So within the next week or two here, we have to submit our final application. This is a $250,000 grant that is sort of a pass-through. The city is merely a conduit between the developer and the state to be awarded these funds. We did the same exact grant for Ernesi Farms previously. So we're working with members of Greystone to put together the final application. And a main component of that application is this resolution from the city. So that's why it's here.
Any discussions, questions, motions?
Move to approve the resolution for the submission of the grant for 230 Watson Street.
Second.
Moved by Jim, seconded by John Split. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Thank you. All right, project updates and staff reports. Anything from Public Works? Finance?
Amanda, anything?
Any updates? EMS? Police? No? All right, Adam.
I just wanted to provide a quick update. We did also, the DNR Catastrophic Storm Grant, we did receive an additional $27,035 to meet the whole $50,000 ask from that grant. So that just helps with the recovery efforts from July.
And to that note, I did receive a letter from Joan Baldwin. I don't know if it'd be congratulating the city or just patting us on the back for the response that we gave for that effort last summer and throughout the fall.
From State Senator Joan
Yes.
Baldwin, you're talking.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Senator Baldwin.
Around here, she's always just Joan Baldwin.
All right, I don't have any appointments or main communications for the week. Does anyone have any communications or future agenda items? No, hearing none, I will seek a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Paige, seconded by David. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:01. Thank you.
happy birthday to my husband who's listening.